I want to move into some financial stuff real quick, everybody, if that's cool. So the big thing I want to talk about first off is Social Security. So for those of you who don't know, and you'll hear this a lot, and I just want to sort of lay the groundwork so everybody understands this. People talk about Social Security going broke in 2034. It'll run out of money. That's not true. It isn't. It isn't. So Social Security, the way it works is, you know it, we all pay into it. It's called FICA. You see it. If you get a paycheck, you see it on your pay stub when your boss takes out money. Or if you're independent, you pay it at the end of the year, right? Or whatever, quarterly, whatever you're doing. But that FICA comes out, that goes to your Social Security and your Medicare. Now, what happened was, back in the 80s with the boomers, they realized the boomers were going to... There were so many of them that were going to be on retirement, it probably wouldn't be able to fund itself, right? Fully, at least. So what they did was they upped the FICA tax on the baby boomers, and the idea was to gather up the money, right? So there'd be enough money when they got older, and they called it pushing the elephant through the snake. It was basically the plan. It wasn't a bad plan. So they created what's called a surplus in the account. So you have money that comes in and then goes out of the account, right? The Social Security account. So we all pay into it, and that money gets distributed. Well, what they did was extra money, and they taxed more to have extra money. They took that extra money and they put it in a separate account as savings. And that's the trust fund on top of it, right? So the idea was that was what was going to happen. So when they say it's going to run out of money in 2034, the trust fund's going to run out of money. That's what that means. And initially that was sort of the plan back in the 80s. Well, things have changed a little bit. Now, if the trust fund runs out, it won't be able to fully fund what it was. We'll still get Social Security, except for we'll only get about 70% of what we're supposed to get now, which would be devastating for a lot of people, right? Because you're not going to get what you're expecting. So there are ways you could fund Social Security. We're going to talk about that here in a second, but that's kind of the issue coming up in the next decade, is how do we fund that so everybody can get the full amount that they're supposed to get, as opposed to taking a big cut. But Social Security is not going to go away unless they pass some law, because we pay into it every year. There's always money coming in. So it's not going to just run out of cash. It doesn't work like that.
Well, so that brings up a good point. Is there somebody who might want to do that?
Do what? Cut Social Security? There might be, and I might have a clip of that person right now.
One thing that I think that, at least the perception is that there's not a whole lot of difference between what you think we should do with entitlements or non-discretionary spending and what President Biden is proposing. It's almost a third rail of politics, and we've got a 33, 34 trillion dollar total debt built up, and very little we can do in terms of cutting spending. Discretionary is not going to help. Have you changed your outlook on how to handle entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Mr. President? It seems like something has to be done, or else we're going to be stuck at 120% of debt to GDP forever.
So first of all, there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amount.
So that's it.
So when I know what to say, I'm just going to repeat the same phrase over and over and over.
He doesn't really understand it, but he's saying, I'm going to cut. I'm into cutting. I'm going to do what the Republicans tell me. I don't care. I just want my base to support me. Right? And that guy phrased the question in kind of a bullshit way, which is the debt to GDP doesn't affect Social Security. The deficit doesn't affect Social Security. It's a separate account. That's what fucks me up about that. And this is a guy on a finance show. We've seen him before, Jay Clayton. He's a total dip. I mean, I even think that, the toupee looks even horrible. But, he's a total doof, and he didn't understand that when you pay into Social Security, it doesn't go to the federal government, it goes to the Social Security account. right? So, it gets paid just because. If you get rid of Social Security, it doesn't really change the deficit or the debt that much, except for it kind of does in this sense, which is what the federal government does is instead of just leaving it there in cash, is they put T-bills in there, or treasuries, right, which are debts. So the government pays interest on our Social Security, right? So it basically borrows the cash and puts T-bills in there, and then it pays us interest to make sure it gets paid off on time. That's why when you have a government shutdown or a delay on the government, Social Security checks don't go out right away because the government hasn't paid back the debt. But if you were to privatize Social Security like Bush Jr. wanted to do, or cut it like Donald Trump wants to do, a lot of that debt goes away. Those treasury bills go away. And that's a lot of the national debt. Right? So the national debt would go down by them seizing your Social Security money. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about stealing your Social Security to pay down the debt so they can look better. And hoping you don't know the difference, which 90% of Americans aren't gonna. They're basically talking about how can I rip you off and get you to thank me.
Oh, God.
No, I know. It's total bullshit. But that's what he asked. That's how
So
he phrased it.
rogue.
But he phrased the question like that, which is, well, we're going to be stuck at this high debt forever if we don't do something about the Social Security. We're going to be high deficits, 120%. It's like, dude, Social Security is not causing that. It's not related to it. So it's kind of a bullshit thing. So if you don't like Social Security or Medicare, I don't know what to tell you, but Trump's your guy. If you do like Social Security or Medicare and you want to get your money paid back to you when you're older and have some security when you're older, right? There is one other candidate you could potentially vote for. We'll look at him real quick.
President Biden ramping up his re-election campaign tonight, attacking Donald Trump in battleground New Hampshire.
Donald Trump said cuts to Social Security and Medicare are on the table again. I'm never going to allow that to happen.
Hitting the former president after he responded to a reporter who suggested something needed to be done about entitlements.
There is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements. I don't necessarily agree with the statement.
The Trump campaign saying he was not talking about cutting benefits, but cutting waste. Mr. Trump just last week posting, Republicans have no plans to cut Social Security. The president today laying out his budget in a show of second-term priorities. The largely symbolic plan would boost spending to $7.3 trillion while raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations. The president calls for restoring the full child tax credit and proposes national paid leave.
So, yeah. Child tax credit, Social Security, raising taxes on the rich. That's what he's talking about. Trump was, I didn't mean cut, because he can't say I'm going to cut Social Security because everybody would freak out. But that's what they're talking about. They're talking about doing nothing about it. So it would basically it would cut itself by 30% in 2034 when the trust fund ran out. If we don't raise tax. Because that's really the only way you can keep it going is to raise tax. And it'd be devastating if we got rid of it. Because you'd have a lot of elderly people living on the street. They can't work.
Yeah, absolutely, literally, because people haven't been able to save enough for their retirements on their own. So you're going to have a bunch of elderly people literally on the streets.
Yeah. So I guess we can get into that a little bit. We'll come back around, sure. So Biden's solution here is basically to do some tax hikes, but it's all going to be on the rich. So Trump's pushing entitlement cuts. I'll just pull this so you guys can see this. So I'm not making this shit up. So it's Yahoo Finance. Biden calls for tax hikes to shore up Social Security as Trump floats entitlements. You guys can look it up, and then I'll just read a little bit of it too. But his budget offered offered a call for tax increases to shore up Social Security, while Donald Trump suggested he would consider entitlement cutting if elected this fall. Let's see, the back and forth between the two candidates Monday showed how Social Security is likely to be a front burner issue in the coming campaign. It will also be central to the next presidential term, no matter who wins, because somebody's got to do something. If we're going to shore it up for 2034, it has to be done now, right? Coming up. So basically, Biden's plan is he's proposing we're going to raise taxes on people making over, I forget, it's like 400,000 or $1 million or some high number. So only the top, 1% of Americans we're going to raise taxes on, the wealthiest people that already paid less percentage in tax than the rest of us, right? And we have to understand this too. At a certain point, I forget what the actual number is. I should have looked it up beforehand, but you can look it up later if you want. But I think it's like 275,000 or something. It's close to that. Once you get to that point, you don't have to pay any more of your money into Social Security. So you pay Social Security FICA on up to a certain point, and beyond that you pay nothing. So if I make $1 million a year, whatever that first 250,000, let's say it is, I would pay Social Security taxes on, but everything I make above that I wouldn't.
And if Social Security was taken out as an equal percentage over all of the income, then
Right.
we could alleviate a big problem. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you just lifted that off and said there's no cap, you pay Social Security on all your income,
Sure.
like everybody else, then yeah, that would solve the problem.
Right.
We wouldn't have to ever worry about Social Security going away. It would be solved. But they don't want to do that. So there's that portion. The other portion for Biden, and we can talk more about this next time too, but basically, so he did the infrastructure plan and the Inflation Reduction Act were huge plans to do a lot of rebuilding, to help out Americans, to create more jobs. It's part of what's gone into the economy and made the economy so good. It's a lot of what it is. But they talk about this. So let me just clip over this real quick. So this was Yahoo Finance again, but Biden is spreading $442 billion across the U.S. The impact could be greatest where he's least popular. So the thing about this, if you read this article, and you guys should definitely check it out, a big chunk of all that money, like the majority of it, is going to rural areas that are mostly Republican, areas where he was not voted for, where they mostly voted for Trump. So these people that love Trump, and Trump has never done anything for them, he just gave a massive tax cut to the rich. Trump talked about every week Trump was president, it was going to be infrastructure week, and he never did anything about infrastructure. Didn't do anything about COVID and dragged us into the situation where we had the inflation that Biden had to deal with. But a lot of that is going to go to these communities. And I'll show you a little graph here just to give you sort of a sense. But they're talking about different things they're going to put it into: resilience, clean water, broadband, but the biggest is transportation. Well, the places that need that the most are the places that don't have it, which tend to be rural areas, where they tend to be
Right.
more conservative and Republican. And it goes back to the thing we've talked about over and over again, which is if you break it down by states or by counties even, or even by just individuals, Democrats pay more in taxes than they receive in benefits as a whole, and Republicans pay or receive more in benefits than they pay in taxes. So if you're conservative or Republican, you're getting more from the federal government in entitlements than you're paying in taxes, where Democrats as a whole are getting less. So Democrats are subsidizing Republicans. And they have been forever, and yet they're the ones who want to cut all these programs. And they vote for the guys who want to cut all these programs that they get the most benefit from.
Right. They're literally saying, please stop subsidizing me.
Right. Please stop giving me free money. Please stop paying for my health care. It's that whole thing when Obama was pushing for the ACA, right? Obamacare. And the guy out there, and he was famous. He was a big meme where he had the sign was, "Tell the government to keep its damn hands off my Medicare." Tell the government to keep its hands off your government medical care? Your government health plan? Okay. I guess you don't want your government health plan.
You're like, okay, then get yourself taken off it.
Well, and under Obama's plan, he got better coverage. And he didn't have to pay anymore. So, I mean, just crazy shit. It's just nuts. Anyway, those are your choices. So, if you don't like healthcare or Social Security or, you know, women having...
Or democracy.
Yeah, democracy or women having rights, then Trump's your guy. If you do like all those things, then, you know, you probably should vote for Biden because they'll take him away if you don't. So
basically, self-loathing equals a Trump vote? What are we saying here?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's every date he's ever had. Self-loathing equals a Trump vote. Yeah, I don't think a lot of women with self-esteem are going out with Trump. That's just my guess.
That's my guess too, man.
All right.